The rain had been falling steadily over Pune's middle-class neighborhood of Kothrud, casting a melancholic hue over the streets. It was late at night, and the usual hum of the city had quieted, replaced by the gentle patter of raindrops. Inside a modest two-story home, the Sharma family was in turmoil. Their 17-year-old daughter Priya had not returned home from her evening tuition class. Calls to her phone went unanswered, and her friends had no information about her whereabouts. Panic set in as the minutes turned into hours. By midnight, the local authorities had been alerted. Inspector Mehta, a seasoned officer known for his calm demeanor, arrived with his team. Accompanying them was Rakesh, a 9-year-old German Shepherd and a veteran of the K9 unit, credited with solving 27 cases. Despite his age, Rakesh's instincts remained sharp, his presence commanding respect. The search began around the vicinity of the Sharma residence. Neighbors joined in, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they called out Priya's name. The nearby lake, a serene spot during the day, now appeared ominous under the overcast sky. The search party combed the area, their voices echoing in the stillness. Rakesh, however, seemed uninterested in the lake. He stood still, his gaze fixed on a seemingly insignificant white wall adjacent to an abandoned construction site. The wall, stained and weathered, bore no distinguishing features. Yet, Rakesh's focus was unwavering. He neither barked nor moved, his body tense, ears perked, and eyes locked onto the wall. Inspector Mehta noticed Rakesh's behavior and approached the wall. He ran his hand over the damp surface, feeling for any irregularities. The wall met the ground at a sharp angle, and upon closer inspection, he noticed faint scuff marks near the base, partially obscured by mud. The marks suggested recent activity, perhaps someone had slipped or been dragged. "Over here," Mehta called out. The team gathered, their flashlights illuminating the area. They began to dig gently, careful not to disturb any potential evidence. After several minutes, a piece of fabric emerged, a fragment of a school uniform. The search intensified, and soon they uncovered Priya's backpack, partially buried and soaked through. Hope surged among the searchers, but it was tempered by the grim reality of the situation. The discovery of the backpack near the wall, rather than the lake, shifted the focus of the investigation. Rakesh's instincts had once again proven invaluable, directing attention to a crucial piece of evidence that might have otherwise been overlooked. As dawn approached, the rain began to subside, and the first light of day cast a pale glow over the neighborhood. The search for Priya continued, now with renewed direction and determination. Rakesh, ever vigilant, stood by, ready to lead the way. The gray skies had begun to lighten, though the neighborhood was still bathed in the somber tones of an early, rain-soaked dawn. The search team had worked through the night, guided only by flashlights and instinct. Fatigue was setting in. Most of the volunteers had returned to their homes, and Inspector Mehta's officers were beginning to discuss regrouping and resuming the search later in the day. The sense of urgency remained, but hope, fragile and thin, was beginning to waver. Then, a low growl broke the stillness. Rakesh had been quiet most of the night, focused, alert, but silent. His sudden change in behavior caught everyone's attention. He had moved toward the rear of the Sharma home, past the narrow alley lined with leftover construction debris and potted plants. His body was rigid now, tail straight, ears pointed forward. A deep rumble rose from his throat, and then he barked. It wasn't just a bark. It was a sharp, guttural command, startling in its intensity. Everyone turned. Jabari, the youngest officer on the team, dropped his notepad and hurried toward the sound. Maya followed closely, her hand instinctively resting near the tranquilizer holster she thankfully didn't have to use. Rakesh stood before an old cement planter, round, heavy, and filled with an overgrown hibiscus that barely flowered. It had been there for years, placed casually against the back wall, as innocuous as any garden decoration. But now, it radiated a different energy. Rakesh barked again, then began pawing furiously at the ground beside it. His claws scraped the wet brick tiles, sending shards of broken leaves and mud flying. "Move the pot," Mehta ordered, voice tight. It took 2 officers to lift the planter, and even then, they struggled with its weight. As they shifted it aside, something beneath it caught the light, a scarf. Thin, checkered, with the name P. Sharma embroidered along the hem. It was soaked from the rain and streaked with dry, rust-colored blood. For a moment, no one moved. The scarf lay there like a whisper of something terrible, too fragile and too real. Maya crouched down, her gloved fingers carefully picking it up. She didn't need to speak. Everyone knew whose it was. Priya's. The silence that followed was heavy, nearly suffocating. Then Rakesh growled again, more forcefully this time, and began digging under the newly exposed space where the pot had been. His paws kicked up loose soil mixed with broken brickwork. A few officers grabbed small tools, prying at the floor tiles that had shifted slightly under the planter's weight. Within moments, one tile gave way. A faint metallic smell rose from the hole beneath. Rakesh didn't stop. His paws moved with a relentless rhythm, a low whine escaping from his throat. Maya placed a hand on his back, gently urging him aside. With slow, deliberate motions, she and the others cleared more of the debris, revealing a narrow cavity beneath the flooring. Inside, partially obscured by torn plastic and a blanket, was a piece of cloth unmistakably belonging to Priya's school uniform. More blood. Not fresh, but not ancient either. Inspector Mehta radioed the forensic unit, voice steady but hard. "We need full excavation and forensic support at the Sharma residence. Possible buried evidence. Potential criminal concealment." Rakesh sat back now, chest rising and falling. His eyes never left the hole. He had done his part. No one said a word for several long minutes. They didn't need to. The evidence had spoken, and it had started with the bark of a dog who had waited all night to make sure he was heard. The discovery behind the planter had shifted the investigation into grim territory. Priya's scarf, stained with dried blood, wasn't just a clue. It was a cry for urgency. While forensic officers cordoned off the backyard, Rakesh wasn't done. His nose, low to the ground, picked up something only he could sense. Without hesitation, he turned sharply, darting toward the side of the house, paws splashing through shallow puddles. "He's got something," Mehta said. "Stay with him." The team followed as Rakesh bounded up a narrow iron staircase that wrapped around the outside of the neighboring house, an aging structure with faded blue paint and clotheslines strung with half-dried laundry. The dog reached the rooftop, sniffed the air, then trotted across the terrace to where an aluminum sheet formed a makeshift cover. His nose pressed against the edge, then he darted forward again, tail stiff with focus. They watched him leap lightly from the terrace of the Sharma home onto the next building. A single-level jump, but risky on the rain-slicked surface. Maya hesitated for only a second before following, her boots clanging against the metal roof. Behind her, Jabari and two officers followed suit. Rakesh now stood before a door on the third floor of the adjacent building, growling low and steady. The house belonged to Vinod Thakkar, a retired bank officer and family acquaintance known for his solitary habits. The door, a rusting steel sheet with a faded padlock, led to what Vinod had always claimed was just a storage room. Rakesh's growl turned to a snarl, then a volley of sharp, urgent barks. He scratched at the door, teeth bared. The scent was unmistakable: fear, sweat, and blood. Mehta's voice was clipped. "Break it." Jabari stepped forward with a crowbar, and with two swift strikes, the lock snapped. The door creaked open, revealing a dim room filled with dusty boxes, old furniture, and, almost hidden in the shadows, a folding desk with a monitor still glowing faintly. But it wasn't the electronics that seized their attention. It was the smear of blood on the floor. It had been hastily wiped, an attempt to clean, but not thorough enough. A small rug, awkwardly placed, covered part of the stain. Maya crouched beside it, lifting the fabric to reveal a wider smear beneath. "She was here," she said, her voice tight. Jabari turned on the light. The flickering bulb exposed more, a tripod in the corner. A digital camera still mounted. Several external hard drives stacked near the monitor. A second monitor displayed a paused video, faint security footage of Priya at a bus stop, timestamped 3 weeks earlier. Everyone went still. "Get tech support here now," Mehta barked into his radio. "Secure every device." Maya clicked the mouse. The screen came to life. Dozens of folders appeared, labeled with months, locations, names, all of them containing surveillance images of Priya, entering school, at tuition, in the park, even inside her own home, through a long lens angle that suggested the footage was taken from close by. Vinod Thakkar had been watching her. For months, Rakesh sat down, still staring at the bloodstain. Priya wasn't in that room. But whatever had happened here, it had changed the story. From a missing person case to something far darker. It was nearly midday when the lead broke. Vinod Thakar had been seen near the Shivajinagar railway station, a packed transit hub where thousands of passengers flowed like restless rivers every hour. The discovery in his locked storage room had already shifted the entire tone of the investigation from urgency to alarm. With Priya still missing and time running short, the team sprang into action. Mehta's orders were crisp and absolute. We move now. Rakesh led the charge. His nose had been pressed to Vinod's discarded shirt, found crumpled behind the door in that dark, blood-smeared room. Now, with the familiar scent burned into his senses, he surged ahead, ears pinned forward, legs churning with purpose. The convoy raced through Pune's choked lanes, sirens wailing. When they arrived at the railway station, the chaos was immediate. The smell of diesel, sweat, wet concrete, and fried street food created a storm of scent. But none of it deterred Rakesh. He bounded through the station's main gate, dodging confused travelers, ignoring whistles and shouts. Mehta, Maya, Jabari, and two uniformed officers followed, pushing past vendors and luggage carts. Inside, they fanned out. A janitor reported a man had discarded a jacket in the public restroom minutes ago. Rakesh was taken to the spot. The old jacket, damp and grimy, still carried the scent. The dog sniffed it briefly, then spun on his paws, bolting out of the restroom without hesitation. But instead of heading toward the main platforms, he veered hard left, toward the decommissioned track yards beyond the operational station. It was a maze of rusting carriages, forgotten freight cars, and broken concrete barriers. Mehta raised his radio. Keep the exits covered. Vinod may be trying to double back. But Rakesh wasn't chasing a man now. He was chasing something else. He weaved between old compartments, stopping only once to sniff the air. Then he lunged toward a dilapidated passenger carriage, cordoned off from public use. The paint was peeling, windows shattered, its wheels locked in rust. Rakesh barked sharply, once, twice, 3 times, then began scratching at the door. Jabari reached the latch, kicked it twice, and the warped door gave way with a shriek of old metal. Inside, the stench of neglect hit them. Mildew, rust, and something more human. At the far end of the darkened carriage, illuminated by light slanting through a broken window, was a figure, tied at the wrists and ankles, a cloth gag pulled tight around her mouth. Priya. Maya was the first to reach her, cutting the ropes with trembling hands. The girl flinched at first, her eyes wide and terrified. But when she saw Maya's face, and the huge German shepherd standing by the door, she burst into quiet, uncontrollable sobs. "You're safe now," Maya whispered, pulling her into her arms. "You're safe." Outside, Mehta's radio crackled to life. Vinod Thakar in custody, platform 4, trying to board a freight car. The final piece had fallen, and in that rotting carriage in the arms of those who hadn't given up, a girl's life had been saved. Not by chance, but by the unwavering instincts of a dog who refused to stop. The train yard echoed with activity, officers securing the perimeter, medics tending to Priya, her parents arriving in a flurry of emotion. Tears streamed down Mrs. Sharma's face as she clutched her daughter to her chest. Priya trembled in her arms, disoriented, her voice a whisper, but alive. Her spirit was frayed, her eyes wide with fear, but she was safe. Vinod Thakar was apprehended within minutes at the southern exit of the station. It was a combination of sharp surveillance, a triggered alert system, and clear footage from the public camera that sealed his fate. He didn't resist. He couldn't. His last chance to disappear had been undone, not by walls or wires, but by the relentless pursuit of a dog who refused to give up. News of Priya's rescue spread quickly. The city of Pune, tense and grieving just hours earlier, now exhaled in collective relief. But at the center of it all, silent, calm, and tired, was Rakesh. 1 week later, under the cloudless sky at the Maharashtra State Police headquarters, a small ceremony was held. Officers stood in polished formation. The commissioner stepped forward, holding a small golden medal etched with Rakesh's name. He didn't bark as he used to. His ears perked gently when he heard his name, but there was no sound from him now. Rakesh stood beside his handler, panting softly. His legs were weaker, eyes clouded with the fog of age, but he still stood tall because he was still on duty. The medal was pinned to his collar as the crowd applauded. Not with fanfare, not with fireworks, but with deep, respectful silence. That night, Rakesh slept peacefully at home with his handler by his side. He did not wake. The next morning, the city mourned. Officers from every division attended his farewell. Flowers rested on his canine vest. Priya's family, still healing, sent a handwritten note. At the end of the final report aired that evening, the narrator's voice, heavy with emotion, delivered the closing words. Not every bark needs to be heard, but some barks. Save lives. Thank you, Rakesh, our silent hero.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.